Sophie Williams, a commerce student, always dreamed of becoming a chartered accountant. She chose commerce for two reasons. First, it was her passion, and second, her boyfriend, Ethan Carter, had also chosen it. Sophie came from a well-off family. Her father was a doctor, and her brother studied computer engineering at a top university in London. Sophie was a cheerful, sweet, and kind girl who never wanted to hurt anyone. She loved making people smile. Although she had many friends, her best friend was Daniel Clark. Sophie and Daniel had been close since childhood. They learned to walk, talk, and even write together. They went to the same school, and their friendship had lasted for 16 years. Sophie's family was rich, but Daniel came from a middle-class background. He couldn't afford big trips or parties like Sophie. Still, they remained best friends. Ethan didn't like Daniel much, but he was polite, because Daniel was important to Sophie. Ethan was an only child and came from a wealthy family, so he had a lot of freedom and lived a luxurious life. Sophie and Ethan had been dating for a year, and Sophie was deeply in love with him. But even with her love for Ethan, she stayed focused on her studies and was the top student in her class. Daniel was studying medicine because his family wanted him to become a doctor. He wanted to make his parents proud and give them a comfortable life. While Sophie and Ethan went to expensive tutors, Daniel couldn't afford them and studied on his own. Sophie gave Ethan all her love, but he didn't always give the same back. Still, Sophie believed that Ethan truly loved her deep down. As Sophie's birthday got closer, Ethan planned a surprise party. He invited all their friends and classmates. Sophie had no idea about the party. Since Sophie and Daniel lived in the same neighborhood, Ethan asked Daniel to bring Sophie to the party. At midnight, on the eve of her birthday, Ethan called Sophie to wish her. Sophie was very happy, because she didn't expect him to remember and be the first to call. She was overjoyed. The next morning, Daniel visited Sophie's house with her favorite chocolate and pasta, which he had made himself. Sophie's father let Daniel in, and he went to Sophie's room. She was getting ready to go shopping. Sophie was so happy to see the pasta, because she knew Daniel wasn't great at cooking. She ate it all without sharing. Daniel watched, amused, while Sophie enjoyed the food. She thanked him and asked him to join her for shopping, but Daniel said he would go with her another time. Sophie spent the day shopping and was very happy. That evening, Daniel returned to Sophie's house, and she showed him everything she had bought. He laughed, joking that she had bought enough for the entire neighborhood. Seeing her happy made Daniel happy, even though he secretly loved her. Daniel then told Sophie to get ready, because he wanted to take her somewhere special. Sophie took her time getting dressed while Daniel waited. When she finally came out, she looked stunning in a sea green dress with matching earrings. Daniel was speechless, but kept his feelings inside, knowing she was with Ethan. He complimented her and took her to the party. When they arrived at the party, Daniel led Sophie to the center of the dark room. He told her to wait, while he went to message Ethan to turn on the lights. As the lights came on, Sophie was surprised to see the decorations and all her friends. Ethan hugged her and asked if she liked the surprise. She said it was amazing and kissed him on the cheek. Sophie was so happy with the surprise that she forgot she had come with Daniel. Ethan lifted her up and took her to the cake. They cut it together while everyone sang. Sophie was lost in the moment and didn't notice that Daniel had left. Daniel quietly left, feeling sad that Sophie had forgotten about him. He didn't like fancy parties, and couldn't afford expensive gifts like Sophie's other friends. But seeing her happy made him happy. He went home, while Sophie enjoyed the party with Ethan and their friends. It was a birthday she would never forget. As time passed, Daniel continued to hide his feelings for Sophie, and soon their final exams approached. Sophie and Ethan went to the best tutoring centers, while Daniel studied hard on his own. The exams went well, and after weeks of studying, they were over. Daniel started preparing for medical entrance exams, while Sophie was bored during her break. One day, she decided to visit Ethan. On her way to his house, she was hit by a car. When Sophie woke up, she was in the hospital with her parents and Daniel by her side. She asked for Ethan, but Daniel told her that Ethan was in a meeting and would come later. Sophie's heart sank. The person she needed most wasn't there. Tears filled her eyes as Ethan finally arrived, apologizing for being late. The doctor then gave the bad news. Sophie would never be able to walk again. Her world fell apart. After going home, Sophie felt even more alone when Ethan stopped calling or visiting her. Daniel, however, stayed by her side, trying to cheer her up, but it didn't help. After 10 days, Sophie asked Daniel to take her to Ethan's house. Daniel, always willing to help her, agreed. When they arrived, Ethan was watching a movie. Sophie went to him, but Ethan didn't seem to care. When she asked why he hadn't visited, Ethan said he couldn't be with someone who couldn't walk. He said, "Do you think I'm going to stay with someone who needs help all the time?" Sophie couldn't believe his words. Daniel was furious but held back. Sophie left without saying anything. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about all the good times she had with Ethan. She remembered how he used to bring her chocolates and flowers, and how he had been the first to wish her luck before every exam. She thought about how he had proposed to her in front of all their friends. But now, all of that seemed like a distant memory. Tears flowed from her eyes as she realized the truth. Daniel continued to support Sophie through her pain. Over time, she began to rely more on him, and their bond grew stronger. One day, Sophie asked Daniel how long he would take care of her. Daniel smiled and said, "For as long as I live." Sophie felt warmth in her heart. She hugged him and whispered, "I love you." Daniel, overjoyed, told her he had been waiting to hear those words for 13 years. 8 years later. "Mum, why are you wearing my coat?" their daughter, Emma, asked with a giggle. "Mum, I want to be a great judge like you," Emma said. "Why did you become one?" Sophie smiled and said, "Life wasn't fair to me, Emma, so I wanted to help others find justice. I wanted to be a chartered accountant, but I became a judge instead." Daniel joined the conversation, laughing. "Why not become a doctor like me?" But Emma was determined. "I want to be just like Mum." Daniel smiled. Life may have taken away your mum's ability to walk, but it didn't take away her strength. And so, they lived happily, supporting each other through everything life brought their way.